Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Why Not Leadership podcast. I am excited to start this venture, and I couldn't be more excited for our guest today is someone who I recently reconnected with. For those of you that know Dan Dominguez, I was a military leader who decided as a young first lieutenant captain to leave the military because I was recruited by a headhunting firm to come be a pharmaceutical rep, something I hadn't even thought about before. And I just happened to get lucky enough to get put on Ed Smith's team in the St. Louis business unit of a new company called Merck. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Ed Smith has been in the healthcare industry for a long time, probably longer than he'd like to admit. Ed Smith is a healthcare executive with diverse functional experience in companies ranging in size from startups to Fortune 100s. He is recognized for delivering exceptional value to health system pharmacy, developing new markets for innovative products, creating competitive advantages through strategic alliances, and managing complex operations. He is well equipped to navigate today's healthcare market challenges with expertise in providers, payers, and partnerships. And that's just a long way of saying Ed's really good at what he does. And the reason I'm having him on is, as we start this new venture and we talk about why not leadership. Why Not Leadership is about those leaders that are out there who are people-centered. I want to work with people, and I want to introduce this audience to leaders who care about people first. You know, I was talking with Ed before the show about the importance of being a people-first leader. Even in the Army, when I was a cadet, we talked about people first, mission always. If you put people first, the mission gets done. If you put mission first or numbers first and then people, the mission may or may not happen, and people aren't going to be happy. So, Ed, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Daniel. Thank you very much for the invitation. And as always, it's always great to catch up with you because every time I talk with you, I come away charged for the rest of the day.
Well, we're gonna charge you up for the rest of the day. That's the least I can do, considering the fact that my experience with you as a 23, 24-year-old, 24, 25-year-old young guy coming out of the military charged me up for the rest of my life. And that's why you're here, Ed. I wanted to start this new podcast with the idea that I wanted to talk to the leaders that made a difference in my life. And what better person to start than that person that I met coming out of the Army in 1994. I had opportunities to do different things, and I made a choice that, hey, I've never lived in Illinois, and I've been in the Army, and I've been all over, stationed in a lot of places, but I've never been to Illinois. And Ed Smith had a job for me in Bloomington, Illinois, and part of the St. Louis business unit. And Ed, you were part of a new company called Merck that was launching a new product that nobody knew about. It was called Losec at first, became Prilosec. And can you believe that was a product that back then had a black box warning and we had to beg people to use, and now It's over the counter. So it's been that long ago. Ed, that was a why not decision for you to leave your safe, very good. You were an exceptional performer at Merck, and you got invited to join this new venture, which was different, out of the box, and we're doing a launch of a new drug. Tell us, how did you make that decision?
Well, Daniel, that's a great question. And quite honestly, like many decisions that I've made where you're venturing into the unknown, it wasn't easy. It took a lot of confidence and belief in the leadership that was over in the new organization that this was the right thing to do. I mean, to your point, I had worked at Merck as a sales rep, hospital sales rep, went into headquarters for a while and came back as a district manager. And all of those were great experiences. But the thing about a large organization like that, whether it's Merck or Pfizer or any other large company, is everything was very well defined of what you did, the processes you use, the forms you use, and you were pretty well constricted within your little niche within the organization. And that's what you did, and that's what you delivered. That's great if that's, the extent of what you thought was possible. I learned in doing that, and it's a great job, but after a year or two, you get a little bored with doing the same thing day after day, week after week, month after month. And you begin to see, as you're interacting with such a wide variety of customers, that there are other ways probably possible in order to yield a better result if you only had the latitude to do so. And coincidentally, at the time, because of the fact that Prilosec or Losec originally was in the portfolio of Merck, and Merck having so many products, it really did not get the attention that it deserved. It did not do as well as was hoped for by the original owning organization, Astra Pharmaceuticals from Sweden. So we launched a new company called Astra Merck, and our charge was to bring the success possible that Prilosec presented to the market. We all thought that we could if we only had the latitude to do things a little bit differently. And I felt so excited when I saw who my counterparts were. There were like 30 of us that ran customer units across the country. And I think almost every one of them, certainly 30 out of 31, just happened to have been selected sometime in the previous 2 years to be part of Merck's Vice President's Award, Masters Club Award. There you go, Masters Club. That included the top 10% of field sales management. And so coming over there, and you look to your left, you look to your right, you got the cream of the crop here from Merck that's going to start this new organization. Now, the next challenge was to begin to build the teams. And I know over at Merck, the way we build the teams was a very prescribed kind of criteria that came from HR, and everybody pretty much looked the same. All the representatives have very similar backgrounds, very similar expectations. Very few of them came from other pharma companies. We wanted to start from scratch over at Merck and build our own. That model wasn't going to work over at Astra Merck because we didn't have time for that to blossom. So we were given the latitude to hire the teams that we thought would bring the most value to the organization. That right there was the first example of giving us latitude that we never had before, somewhat constrained, but latitude to hire people like a Daniel that wasn't a pharmacist by background or a nurse by background calling on physicians. Because from my viewpoint, having been a rep for a long time and seeing a lot of counterparts from other companies, you didn't necessarily have to have that kind of background to be successful. So I opened the box to all possibilities. And Daniel, he came from the military, and I ended up hiring within, I think, maybe the 20 or 25 people we had in that customer unit, Daniel. We had 3 or 4 others that also were from the military. So needless to say, I kept going back to that same source because I had been so successful with it. And Daniel was a good example.
There's so much you said there. I want to dig in because you talk about that cream of the crop that came from the Merck group, and you looked around and said, "Hey, even if they don't know what they're doing, these are some great people that I've got around me. We're poised for success. These are the was it President's Club you said?"
It was called the Masters Club for those who were we'll call it the district managers across Merck,
right?
Those who got into that club 10% per year.
Yeah. So you're already part of an elite class, but I remember, I had multiple opportunities coming out of the military, and I remember weighing my options, and there was an article that was written about Astra Merck, and it's called Pens and Pads No More. And it talked about the way they were going to revolutionize. And for those of you who know me and my why is to contribute to the success of others, my how is to challenge the status quo and do things differently. So when they said, "Hey, we're going to do something completely different than everybody else is doing," We're not gonna give pens and pads. We're gonna come in and create customized solutions for our customers. We're gonna have that same budget that all those drug reps have when they drop off pens and pads, but we're gonna use it in a creative way in order to create solutions for our clients. That spoke to me. We were breaking the mold. We were going to do something different. And then you had, as the leader, so much latitude just within the St. Louis customer unit, I remember, to do things your own way. And we created a lot of creative solutions for people.
Yeah, it was a very, very customized approach that wasn't headquarter controlled or led by marketing and headquarters. Granted, there was always this baseline of expectations of what we should be doing on behalf of the products.
Right.
But to your point, Daniel, because not every customer is the same across the country, we had to represent the customers and demands and what their interests were within the footprint of the St. Louis customer unit. And so people like you and your counterparts would interact with physicians, and they all looked for different kinds of customized solutions depending upon what their practice needs were. And because of that office that we have within St. Louis, and it was outfitted so that we could develop our own solutions with our own little small marketing team, I think that's what helped to separate us apart from all of our competition out there and allowed us to be much more successful with a much smaller footprint of headcount than others to get to the point where eventually Prilosec became the #1 brand across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this statistic, and I share it all the time. I think the market said, Prilosec in its best year will do $500 million in sales. And the year I left Astra Merck, which by then was AstraZeneca, I think that year we did $7.5 billion. So this was a drug that was supposed to do 500,000, $500,000 in their best year, and we did $7.5 billion the year I left. And Prilosec, became the standard of care for gastroesophageal reflux disease. I've always been very proud to have been on the cutting edge of launching that drug. The other thing we did differently, Ed, is there were 500 of us. Pharmaceutical companies at the time, they would have 20,000 reps. We covered huge territories. I remember running into the Pfizer rep or the Merck rep, and there'd be 5 or 6 of them covering the same geography that we did. So we were small and mighty. Tell what about that? How did you manage that, Ed? Because that's a big challenge. You come from running these small or large groups of people covering small geographies, making big impact, versus now you had really small teams covering very large geographies and trying to make the same impact.
Well, I think a lot of their model was the more the repetition of the message, the greater the likelihood that it might be remembered. And to your point, Daniel, for some of the largest companies, they may have 4 different representatives representing different products, all calling on the same doctor. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine how doctors reacted to that. And all of those companies were very similar in what they said, what they left, the pens and pads. Then they go on to the next customer, and I'll see you in another 3 weeks. The difference about us was we were able to develop those customized solutions that you already referenced. We had a product that was in demand by all of them, so they would like to have samples in order to get their patients started on the product. And they knew that we respond quickly. We've got the flexibility at our St. Louis customer unit to do a lot of the things that our, 5 times larger sales forces would have to go through many obstacles at headquarters to even get something that might closely resemble what we could do. And of course, I like to think that that all of us had great personalities too, and because of that, we were very adept at building relationships, not only with physicians but with all of the personnel within their offices.
Ed, you mentioned something that's really important, because if we look at your why operating system, and this is a big part of what we do at Why Not Leadership. We help leaders understand themselves and then understand their teams better. And with a why operating system that's made up of make sense, simplify, and clarify, I would look at Ed Smith and say, man, he is an all business kind of guy. He wants to make sense of things. He wants to solve the problem. He wants to make it simple. And then he wants to clarify it so that we can move forward faster. And you definitely did that. But there was a part of you that, endeared you to your team, I think, endeared you to me for sure, because you took a guy, and, when we look at Dan, Dan is a guy who's here to contribute, challenge, and make sense. So we shared make sense. We both like to solve problems, but you wanted to clarify and simplify in order to solve those problems. Me, I came in, and you probably remember this, Ed. I just want to make a difference. I just want to help people. I loved being able to go to a doctor and say, "Hey, how can I help you?" That's my favorite question to ask. It was my favorite question to ask in the Army. It was my favorite question to ask when I was in student government in high school. It's been my favorite question to ask as a sales professional my entire career. How can I help? And that's such a big part of being a contributor. The part that I'm so that I definitely want to dig into here is the challenge part. I don't do things by the book. And the part that appealed to me about Astor Merck is that, hey, they're breaking the rules. They're going outside the box and doing things differently. And you were able to take that and turn it into turn me and Mark Charette and others and somebody who, hey, Dan wants to make a difference, doesn't want to follow any rules, and he just wants to solve problems. So it seems like I was perfectly made for that organization. But for somebody who is about making sense, clarifying, and simplifying, how do you manage somebody like a Dan Dominguez who's, yeah, he's gonna get you results, but he may not always do things by the book. So talk about that, Ed, because you did a great job. I never felt micromanaged or really managed by you. I always felt led.
Well, that's a great question, Daniel. And I think a lot of that came from where I came from. Having a history of everything is so well prescribed for you, what you use, what you say, how often you do it, what you leave behind, that there was little, if any, thought that you had to put into your day-to-day job other than, okay, where am I going to go next? And to some degree, even that was dictated to you. Once we joined Astor Merck, it's not like, the Wild West again, where everybody can do whatever they want with whoever they want. There were still some guardrails, if you will, of what we would do. But the thing is, Daniel, with your sort of attitude and your willingness to ask the how can I help you question instead of here's what I got for you, doctor, ask the question of how can I help you? You were able to learn so many things that without that question, we probably would not have been as successful as we ended up being. Just to open that question and see what's important to them, what we can deliver for them. And that was our differentiating factor. It wasn't that we had 5 or 6 people all doing the same thing with them, or that we left better pens than somebody else or more samples than somebody else. It was our interaction with them, our ability to communicate, our ability to quickly react to what they're looking for and help them make a difference in their practice. Mm-hmm. And you weren't constrained to just simply calling on the physician. It could be on the business manager. It could be with others. They all had interest. And believe it or not, the physician who was doing the prescribing, they noticed all of that to the point that you were welcome within their office, and access was much less of an issue than those that were just simply doing the same thing day after day with 5 times the number of reps.
And you bring up such a great point, Ed, because we were able to be creative and helpful. And I learned so much in those first few years. There was a doctor, and I wish I could remember his name because I'd go back and thank him. There was I remember going to visit him, and this was in this is the early 90s. Pharmaceutical reps were still, I think we still developed relationships with physicians. There wasn't that flood of people coming in every day. But I remember, sitting down with him and he says, Dan, I know you're new. Let me tell you what's important to me. He said, okay, well, tell me about it. He says, there's 3 things you got to do in order to get past that door. And you're sitting here in my office for a reason. He says, the first thing you got to be is you got to be presentable. And I said, what does that mean? He's like, well, you're always dressed well. You look like a professional. So you were presentable. And that's that's going to at least get somebody to open the door. The next thing you got to be is personal. He says, and you are. I enjoy talking to you. We tell jokes. We talk about, we tell stories. And next thing I know, 10 minutes have gone by and I've enjoyed my time with you. So being personal is important. And the last thing you got to be is knowledgeable. And he says that comes last because I don't care how much you know until you're either personal, presentable, presentable, personable, and then knowledgeable. Because you got to get in the door. You got to get me into a conversation. And I took that to heart, and I've used that my entire career. You got to always be a pro. Dress like a professional. Dress for the job, right?
Yep,
And,
exactly.
and then be personable. It's just as easy to be a jerk as it is to be a nice person. And so just be nice always, and take care of those gatekeepers. Joanne Black, someone that I've gotten to know through my work, is she works on helping people create referrals. When referrals come from everywhere, and sometimes that gatekeeper, the secretary, the person at the front desk, or the nurse, you treat them like human beings. And next thing you know, the next time you come in, they're saying, "Oh, Dan, wait a minute." And they're sneaking you past the other people in the waiting room to make sure you get time with the physician. And that came from adding value.
Uh-huh. Well, I think that what you're talking about, Daniel, is the value of having such a diverse sales team as what we did. I'll just extend it to the diverse customer unit team, because there were members that weren't directly part of the sales team. And all of that you just shared there, that's the kind of learnings that all of us would have when you would share that with the whole group. I think the tendency of where I came from before was within a district of sales reps within a large pharmaceutical company. You really didn't want to share your best practices, because you were all graded on a bell curve, and what your final rating was sort of relative to your counterparts there. We never had an incentive system like that over at Astra Merck. We wanted to do what was best for the customer unit and do what was best for the me, the individual me's. There's the we of the team and the me of the individuals. And every me had a little bit different interests in what they were looking for, what they were looking to accomplish in their career, and what piqued their interest most about the job that they had. And it was me, sort of like the bumblebee. I'd go from flower to flower to flower as I visited with you and your other counterparts, to learn what made them uniquely different and uniquely successful relative to the others. So all I was doing was sharing honey, if you will, with others on the team, so that they could learn indirectly from what you were doing within your area. It was a great model. It was a great model, and probably the best sales leadership experience that I've ever had.
You bring up something that's really important, and you talk about what was different is we had collaboration, and that and I think you've got to take credit for that, Ed. You created a collaborative team environment, and it wasn't just the field sales folks. And it's like you said, it's the folks in the back office in St. Louis that were creating the customized solutions for customers. Everybody felt like they were a part of the team. The other thing that you brought up that's really important is everybody wanted to collaborate because we were all interested in the greater good.
Exactly.
And so when you talk about an environment that you came from before, where everybody's graded on a bell curve, and nobody wants to share best practices because they want to make sure that they keep that to themselves so that they can continue to be number one. That doesn't sound like a great collaborative environment, not one where people are going to share their best practices, so that everybody, so it's that rising tide that raises all ships. Every time somebody had a great idea, and we'd come together in those meetings in St. Louis, we shared them. But you fostered that environment. What kind of training, Ed, did you have to prepare for going from, blue suit, tie, navy blue suit, tie, automaton Merck rep, district manager, to really kind of, hey, how are you going to do it? You had all the latitude in the world. Tell us about those meetings. I bet those were some fun meetings with Matt Emmons and the leadership team at Astra Merck when they were getting you guys ready to deploy.
Yeah, it was a great thing, Daniel. I remember each one of me and my counterparts. I referenced there was 30 some of us, and Matt Emmons was the overall vice president of sales. All of us were different, and all of us had unique responsibilities. Some were the link to HRs, some were the link to the marketing team. I just happened to be sort of playing to my make sense thing here. I just happened to be called among the group the grid man. And what's the grid man? The grid man is the one that maintains the Excel spreadsheet that shows all of the different kinds of projects that all of us are involved, so we can look for the intersectionality of who we should reach out to should a particular situation that references their skill set and get them to be employed in it. I mean, quite honestly, Daniel, to your point there's no particular training that I think that I underwent in order to get where I've gotten in my career. I will attribute most of my perspective to the fact that I've had a wide variety of roles. I knew when I was a sales rep and then a district manager with Merck that it was a great job, fantastic company, made good money. But what was least satisfying about it was it seemed to be so redundant with what I did from a day-to-day basis. I knew that there had to be more opportunity within pharmaceutical sales or healthcare in general. If I just stepped out a little bit, tried some new roles, challenged my comfort zone of doing something different. And in many cases, in fact, Daniel, I look back before we had our session here to see how many different roles that I've had in my career, dating all the way back when I was, a pharmacist before I joined Big Pharma. And I counted up 14 or 15 different roles. And out of those, there were 7 of them that didn't even exist before. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of creating from scratch what you believe would be the greatest value that you can bring in a role. And what's your perspective on that? It's the variety of things that you've done before. And from that, to be able to pull out success and employ it in a particular situation. So my why, it makes sense. Okay, I have a pretty good perspective because in many of these different functional areas I've worked, why they're asking us to do X, Y, and Z. You add up all of those different things that are being asked of a sales force or an account leadership team or commercial operations or market access, whatever it might be. I think it positions you, it allows you to sort of distill down all of those different demands that are coming from 4 different corners from headquarters to what's the essence of what needs to be done within this group to have the most impact on the customer set that they're calling on. Daniel, I had the pleasure of having a variety of customer facing roles, which is what sales is and account management and things like that. And I had the luxury, if you will. I'll tell you, originally it was a little scary. In fact, all of these, when you get out of your comfort zone, they're very scary because you've not done it before. So you're not really sure what you're getting into, but it sounds like a very interesting job and it'll add to my skill set. So a lot of those things I did, I just went in and had to have self-confidence that you could be successful. Right. You might need a little bit of nurturing along the way, how to make sure you don't upset anybody. Right. But I think what it does over time, it allows you to have a perspective that you wouldn't have if you just did the same thing over and over and over again for 30 straight years.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a huge variety of roles. And, the reason you're here, Ed, the reason I'm talking to you is because of your leadership. And I think you've led it, and we were talking about in the pre-show, Ed, about I think everyone's a leader. And we all lead at different levels, right? You've had the opportunity to lead at a really high level. What's your, if you had an opportunity today to talk to somebody who's taking their first district manager role. I mean, you had a varied path. You went to pharmacy school. You became a pharmacist. The next thing you know, now you're in Big Pharma and you're in sales. Now you're not a pharmacist and you're now a sales rep. And then you go to become a sales leader. What's the most important leadership lesson that you take with you?
Well, I think the most important lesson that I would have for new sales managers is look for the promise in your team. Learn before you direct. Understand the why of each person. What's important to them? Why are they in this job? What do they hope to accomplish? And where have they been before? And where would they like to go next? Try to keep your commentary to a minimum until you understand their particular situation and collectively what you as a district, you as a team, are hoping to strive for together. I would hope by being a new district manager, you may not have a whole lot of experience that you can base any sort of direction that you have on. Oftentimes, district managers are just those who've been successful team members themselves. Sometimes that makes a great manager. Sometimes it doesn't make such a great manager. But I think that's a good starting point. At least you have the basics of it. But I think you need to have a little bit of humility to understand the fact that you don't know it all.
Mhm.
And in fact, I learned more from the team members of the customer unit that we had in St. Louis than I knew for myself. Probably would
Mhm.
never admit it to any of you, but I learned more in having those different kind of sessions and having one-on-one conversations and calling on customers with people like you. I learned a tremendous amount, and that kind of learning helped to shape me as a leader. So it's not as if you're born a great leader. Some people believe in nature. I believe it's more in nurture. You develop it over time from these experiences that you've had, whether they're good or they're bad.
Right.
All of them contribute to who you are. So for a new district manager, I would say, be energized about your role, be energized about your team, learn about them as quickly as you can, and know that you'll be successful in the long run.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Something you were really good at, Ed, and that is getting to know people individually. And we've kept in touch over the years. I coached track and cross country. I loved coaching my oldest daughter and her track and cross country team, and then of course have coached leaders and sales teams at a high level. And it's not the stuff you say at the quarterly meeting, right? That you say in front of the group, because the opportunities to address the group are few and far between, or at the national sales conference when you're a national sales leader, like I got the opportunity to do. But it's those one-on-one conversations that really matter. And whether it's in coaching track, it's you find you get in front of you do the rah-rah speech in front of everyone, but it's in those one-on-one conversations where you really learn the why of the people on your team and what's important to them, and then making sure you're giving them what's important to them so that they want to perform for you. And you did that better than anyone. I think you had great personal relationships with everyone on the team. The other thing I think you did a really good job, and it's talked about some, is creating psychological safety, where there were no dumb ideas. There were just ideas. Let's throw them out and let's listen to everyone, and true to your why of makes sense. You take the good ones, right? Yeah, Dan, that's great, but we're not going to hire a cappella singers to follow you in to the doctor's office and say, "Hey, Dan's here," right? There's some stuff you just don't do, but you make sense of it and take the stuff that mattered. I love the story you tell about being the grid man. You're the spreadsheet guy.
Yeah,
And
let's
it makes
mention,
sense.
guy.
You were the one that took all that everybody was okay. Who do we go to? Hey, here, let me put it all on a spreadsheet. So let me make sense of it so that we know who to go to. Take it from here to here. And you did that so well for us as a team in the St. Louis customer unit. Ed, any parting words as we get to the end of the interview here? I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about your biggest lesson. What is it that you've learned in all that time you've spent in sales and in leadership and in strategic roles with 14 different types of roles, to someone who's new to leadership as a why not leader yourself? What's your parting words for our audience?
Well, I didn't have a chance to prepare for this one, Daniel. Probably a variety of things. Know as a leader that you don't know it all. There are so many good ideas out there that probably have never crossed your mind before. Understand the benefits of exploring the unknown and being uncomfortable with the unknown. It's a natural feeling. But if you've been successful in life previous to that, there's a high likelihood that you'll be successful in the things that you've never thought possible or didn't think you could do or was unsure whether you'd be successful. Be open to change. Some might say I bounced all over the place. Well, I don't really necessarily look like that, because in everything that I've done before, I've learned a lot that I've been able to employ in subsequent positions. And at this point in life, I mean, I would say that I would encourage people to take risk, to get out of your comfort zone, to understand that there's a lot to learn with everybody that you interact with, whether that's a customer that you're calling on, it's a teammate that you have, or even somebody within your family. Everybody's got perspectives that you don't have. And if you just open your mind and be quiet and listen, you'll probably learn a lot more than you ever thought possible. The last thing I thought I would say, Daniel, is, and I think we're showing it right here this morning, there's a tremendous value in maintaining your network that you develop over life. You know, whether in my case it was something as a district manager, my district manager counterparts, all the relationships that I built at Ashton Merck and the other places that I've been since. I mean, I feel very blessed to have such a wide network of folks that I could call upon, and to know that if I were to reach out and like to have a conversation tomorrow with someone that I haven't spoken with in 5 years, we can do that. So maintain those relationships, because those are the value in life.
I love that, Ed. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Not only 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, but today with our audience at Why Not Leadership. I really appreciate you helping us kick this off. You are our first guest of the Why Not Leadership podcast, and that goes down in history. So thank you very much, Ed. I look forward to continuing our conversation after we go off the air here. Have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I enjoyed it. Best of luck in your new leadership role.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.